Hello everyone, I am back with my second process video in our The Doctors Are In series, which is a collaboration I'm doing with Irit Landgraf. So I have 3 videos this weekend and she has 3 videos this weekend. And this is a series in which the two of us who happen to be doctors in our regular non-scrappy lives, we give you 2 different takes on solutions to what ails your creative body and soul. And so this weekend, we are taking on the task of diving into our old stash and using some older supplies to scrapbook some current photos and stories. So check out the playlist in the information section below, and also check out the link that I've left in the information section below for Irit's channel, because her work is very lovely and beautiful and oftentimes completely different than mine. So make sure that you have a look at her work as well. So let's get started on today's layout. So I'm starting here with the layout that I did yesterday, which was the first race, and I'm using the Sassafras, a whole bunch of different Sassafras collections for this project, and I'm making a companion page. So this is not really a double page layout as much as it is 2 single page layouts. I'm also going to create an insert today that will go between the 2 layouts. And so I'm going to start by cutting down my photos. These photos I printed with my Epson Picturemate charm, and they are printed at 2.5 by 3.5. And normally I will print horizontal layouts or photos like this at 3 by 4. I really like working with that size, but I wanted to be able to span these in a line like this and not take up the entire 12 inches of the width of my project. And so that's why I decided to print them just slightly smaller. So I have an inch on either side when I line them up like this. And right from the beginning, my only idea here is that I would like to make use of a whole lot of horizontal lines on this page. And I'm doing that because of the idea of a race having a beginning, a middle, and an end. And although it was kind of like a go in and then turn around and come back, the idea of just kind of running being a very horizontal, logical, one thing after another type of event really kind of appealed to me. And also I think that this paper is really conducive to making strips like this. So like my last layout, I have a challenge here where I love Sassafras paper, and what I love about it is all of the beautiful patterns and how kind of retro and mismatched they look together. And so I want to make use of these patterns. Whenever I use Sassafras, I don't want to use one piece of Sassafras, I want to use it all. So I am going to try to get lots and lots of pattern onto this page without it looking too overwhelmed, and that's always a bit of a challenge. So I took that rainbow page from that's now sitting behind my layout, kind of like broad horizontal strips. And I put that because I'm thinking about using it as a mat for my whole page. I'm going to change my mind about that, and I'll tell you why and when in a few minutes. So right now I'm just grabbing some patterns. These are not all from the same collection, but I think they look quite nice together. And I'm wanting to be a little bit careful to make sure that I introduce some brighter. I don't want everything to have that yellowy look that many of these patterns have, and so that's why I introduced that diamond pattern. It has a bit of a brighter white. It's still not bright white, but it's a little bit brighter than the white, which is actually kind of like a yellowy look on the backs of all of the, like as the bases of all of the other patterns. I keep pulling over my other layout, which I don't always do even when I'm coordinating two pages together, but I keep bringing it over because I really want these two to look balanced. Now, here's something I'm going to do that I often do, which is I am going to mat these on a piece of black cardstock, and that will do 2 things. It kind of ties them together and gives it a real photo strip kind of look to it. And it also gives the photos some emphasis, and they don't kind of get lost on the really light colored background. And one thing that doing this does is it kind of really emphasizes the fact that each of those photos were just ever so slightly trimmed differently. And so, because I trimmed them one at a time, and it's almost impossible to get them exactly perfectly with the exact same border all the way around the edges of them. So that was kind of irritating me. It doesn't always irritate me. Sometimes I just leave that as it is. But what I've decided to do is mat all of the photos in white first. And what that does is it gives me a nice, even, consistent white outer edge. Even though the inner edges might not always be exactly perfect, you can't see that quite as much because it's not as much of a contrast, like between the light blue of the sky and the white of the border, or the gray of the sidewalk and the white of the border. That's not as much of a contrast as the contrast that I'm getting between the white border around the photo and then the black matting. And so I just didn't want that to have a real jaggedy edge. And so, like I said, sometimes I don't care about that. But today I do, because I'm really trying to emphasize that horizontal line that this matted photo strip is going to give this overall project. Because that photo strip really does become the main structure of this page, because these other patterns don't have the same kind of contrast that the photo has. And so they kind of all mix in together and disappear together. Although I am going to do something to emphasize them a little bit, and also to bring in some of the elements from the other page. You can probably guess what that is. I'm going to sew some black on it. I'm tucking some of these in so that it doesn't look too orderly. Like, I don't want it to kind of go from top to bottom, like with everything layered on top of the next thing. I want it to be kind of this over that, and then that over this, and kind of to have a bit of a back and forth kind of look to the layers, instead of looking all neatly lined up and layered all in one direction. Now I am going to outline the edges of this scalloped edge. This is a beautiful, one thing that I love about Sassafras is how they do these beautiful scallops and detailed edging on the manufacturer strip at the bottom of each page. So I want to make use of that, as I did in the other page in the other project that I did. I am outlining it just to put a little bit more emphasis between that owl border strip and the triangular paper behind it. And I want these two to overlap, so I actually want the diamond to overlap over top of the green paper. And then I'm going to stick the triangle paper under the green paper, and then that border will go over the triangle paper. So again, it doesn't look too much like it's all layered in exactly the same way. And I like how this looks, and as I'm putting it together, I'm thinking maybe I've given up on the idea of the rainbow background paper border because it was too busy. It was not doing a nice job of framing it in. So I think I thought I might use the black cardstock as my border, but I'm actually not going to put any border on this. So here I am going with my little half-size Kenmore sewing machine, and I'm going to sew just straight stitching along the edges of each of these, not every single strip of paper, but each of the outside ones. So some of them are covered on both edges by another piece of paper. So I think the triangular pattern is kind of, both of its edges are buried by other papers. And so I'm not going to stitch on that, I think. Let me just check. Yeah, I think I do not. Yeah, I don't sew on that. Also, I find that is probably the busiest pattern of all of these. And so I wanted to just kind of leave it alone and not add another thing to it by adding the lines, the horizontal lines of the stitching. So I actually didn't record all of the sewing because it was very repetitive, but I used a very, very tiny zigzag stitch on some of them, and I double stitched, like I kind of did double straight stitching of some of them. And then I just keep my threads in a little container so that I can easily throw them away and they don't get stuck on top of everything. I like trimming my threads as I go. It makes it easier. When I'm done, and I don't have to go and trim things down. It's just my preference. So now I have this, what I think is a really beautiful base for this layout. And I'm thinking that the majority of the embellishing is sort of done, right? So those pattern papers are so detailed and intricate that I don't want to add a whole lot of embellishing. In fact, I'm thinking I'm probably just going to put my title, which is 5K, and my journaling, and that is it. And I thought I was kind of trying to decide between those two different places, down here where it's at or up in the top left-hand corner. And what made me decide to put it down here is that I thought it balanced nicer with the, more nicely, I don't know, with the first race layout if I put the title down here. So doing your page on grid background paper like this, both of my pages here are on grid paper, really makes it easy to line things up. So I just slapped that photo strip down according to the lines on the grid background paper. And now I'm going to fuss a little bit with this 5K, but it doesn't really matter because I'm going to end up moving it in the end anyways. But I really like how these look together, and as I'm looking at them, I've decided I'm actually not going to mat the layout in black because I like how it looks, just the two of them together with neither of them matted in black. I don't think it would necessarily look bad if one was matted in black and one wasn't, but I just decided not to. So I'll read my journaling to you. It says, when Scott's coworker invited him to run this race, he wasn't sure if he wanted to try it. He wasn't confident in his running abilities since he only recently started running. He also wasn't sure if he would enjoy running with so many people. But there's only one way to learn if you can do something or if you like something, ... So off to the race he went. Now, I wrote that off the top of my head, which is a little risky. Sometimes I end up rambling or I end up with much shorter or much longer journaling than I really wanted. But I find that the more I do it, the better I get at knowing how much writing I need to fill up a certain space. And I don't know, it worked out okay this time. It doesn't always work out that way. If you were really concerned about it, I do recommend that you do your writing ahead of time and space it out. And in some of my other process videos, if you follow me, you might have seen, I have a couple of different tips for doing that. One is to journal on tracing paper in the space that you need, and then you can move it around your page or just make sure that it fits where you want it to be, and then recopy it in the same kind of, trying to be the same size. So here I am. I really wanted to get that bluebird cloud-ish type of sticker on the previous layout, so I'm going to get it over here. I thought he makes a nice kind of starting marker. And then I also put that star beside 5K. I like the brightness, the stark whiteness of it compared to some of the other things on the page. I know it kind of stands out as the whitest thing on the page, but it does kind of bring some brightness to the page that once I do a little bit of journaling on it, it won't look quite so white and bright. I am going to outline around the inner cloud bubbly edge and also the outer cloud bubbly edge here, just to give this embellishment a little bit more emphasis. I'm only doing very, very few embellishments on this page, so I'd like them to stand out. And the reason I'm doing so few embellishings, so I'm just using my Slick Surface Writer here. It's a Staedtler Lumocolor pen in the fine tip. And I just put on your mark ... with the bluebird. And now I plan to put the time of his race on the white star here. And the reason I'm using so few embellishments is that, as you can see, this page really has a lot going on, all of these patterns. And that's, again, what I love about a Sassafras page, is that it has all of this energy from all of these different patterns that sort of clash and coordinate all at the same time. And I really like emphasizing that when I use Sassafras products. And so because I've used so much paper here, I'm just looking for his time. I had written it on a little Post-it note, and then I got some mail and unpacked it and ended up really losing that Post-it note and a few other things in my workspace between my second layout and between my first and my second layouts. So I had to look it up again. So 27.18, and then I put great time. And now I turn my page over to trim off the edges. Sorry that happened off screen. I just turned it over and used my scissors to trim it. And now this all happens off screen. I'm sorry. I realized after I did it that I hadn't zoomed out. I'm just taking some enamel dots. I thought about adding some of those layered flowers that I used in the other layout. They were from Sassafras. You can see them over there on the far left side of your screen from the other layout there. I thought about using some of those, but anytime I tried to use them, I didn't have enough space to use them nicely. And I thought if I put those on, I'm really just embellishing gratuitously there. And I don't want to do that. So enamel pieces give me, these are like enamel dots, but they're little enamel shapes. And they give me some nice emphasis when I put them on the background paper. And just like the contrast is nice, and it just gives you a little something interesting to look at. So I have a heart and a little star, and I'm trying to vary the colors over here. So I had a red heart, and I keep going back and forth between which is going to be a heart and which is going to be a star and which is going to be a circle there. And then I just put 2 up here. I figured the bluebird is a third element for that top corner there. So now the page is done. I think it's pretty much done, but I do off screen, I do pull up the edges just to on those scalloped border shapes, and you'll see those on the photos below. So now I have this race bib that I want to include as a little insert in between these 2 pages. And so I'm just going to, instead of measuring it, I just decided to trace. And then I'm just using a pencil there, and then I'm going to use my Caterpillar crop to trim it down based on my pencil lines. And then I'm going to go and grab my corner chomper, my We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper. I have the one that's like a light minty, greeny, bluey cut. I guess it's mint green. And I'm using the larger size. I have a piece of washi tape that distinguishes the large side from the smaller side. Because when I was doing Project Life and rounding my corners, I didn't want to accidentally use the wrong side. So I just put a washi tape, and it actually says wrong on it. So I just grabbed the blue piece of pattern paper. That I chose that blue because it doesn't show up on the page I just did, but it does show up. It's a fairly large part of the first page, and so it ties the 2 pages together a little bit. And I really like that pattern too. It's really cool. And so now I'm going to cut up this photo. And so my first thought is I want to do a little bit of extra journaling on the back of the race bib. And I also wanted to include this other photo, even though the photo includes mostly just the same thing that's on the other side, but it does also include his earbuds, his shirt, his sneakers, and his Apple Watch. And that's kind of provides some context, right? So these stickers are actually not sticky. They're so old that when I pulled them off the paper, they're just like paper now. They have zero stickiness on them. So they're kind of like die cuts now. So anyhow, I'm just playing around with different ways that I could layer this photo with some journaling pieces. Now these ones are sticky. Now the problem is that I have quite a lot of journaling. Like I have a lot to say here because this is where I'm going to put all of the journaling that didn't already show up on either of the other 2 layouts. And I want it to sit kind of right around here so that the arrow is pointing at the beginning of the race. I thought that was kind of cool. The problem is that my photo is a little bit too large. See, it's not balanced nicely with that giant arrow sticker. And at first I thought I'm thinking about journaling on the arrow sticker, but that there's so much contrast between the cream and the red dots that I'm not sure how legible that's going to be. My other option is also not going to end up being very legible, but that's okay. I'll talk about that when the time comes. So I'm using a broader pen here for outlining this arrow. What might have looked nice also is to do some sewing here because there was sewing on the other page. So the broader marker does make that arrow have more of a bold look that offsets the bold look of the matting on the two layouts that this insert is going between. I reprinted the photo at 1.5 by 1.5, thinking I really need it quite a bit smaller than 2.5 by... No, 3 by 3 was the original size. So 1.5 by 1.5 is like half the size. And that was too small. So here I am printing up my third. Thank goodness I have a home printer. So that's the Picturemate Charm by Epson that I have. And that's just, you know what? That's the Goldilocks right there. Just right. Yeah, I wanted something to, I like the polka dots, but I wanted something to kind of give me a bit of a break from the polka dots because they're kind of a lot in that big amount. And at this point, I'm thinking that the photo might be up on the top. And then I thought, then once I cut that label and the trim on it kind of makes a nice little frame for the photo. And then I thought there's really not enough contrast going on this insert compared to the layout that it's right beside. So whenever I don't have enough contrast, a really easy solution for that is to just matte something in black, and that always gives you a little bit more contrast. These stickers are pretty forgiving. They're, if you're careful, you can pull them off of one another. And that's what I did because now I'm deciding to use that arrow basically as a frame for my photo as opposed to kind of staggering some journaling and label-y type pieces around it. So here I am journaling on that fairly dark background patterned paper, which is not the nicest place to do some journaling. But I'll read it to you first. It says, Scott started working out in September when Pascal joined our family and started going to the gym with Scott. Oh, that's kind of not grammatically correct, is it? Anyhow, with lots of hard work, dedication, and a few work fitness challenges, he has lost 40 pounds and gained so much more. Not really grammatically correct, which is one of the things that happens when you journal off the top of your head. But you know what? I don't mind. My albums are, just pretty casual. Like I don't think of them as being too formal. It's not important to me that they're perfect. I like them to be fun to do. And if I put too much pressure on myself for them to be grammatically perfect and creative and beautifully written, then I will spend more time fussing over getting it perfect than I will doing the fun stuff. So I try to let those sorts of problems just go and not really think about them too much. So I have a Becky Higgins 6x12 page protector here, and I want the bib to be not at the very bottom of the page. So I am putting some sewing that's going to basically support the bib at the place that I want it to sit. So I just kind of sized it up based on the other layout, just roughly. And then I'm running these stitches, and this brings some sewing into the insert because there's sewing on both of the pages on either side of it. And so I just sewed 2 messy lines, and then I also went back with that tiny little zigzag stitch and added just a tiny little bit of zigzag stitching. And that is really all the embellishing. I was thinking that I might put more embellishing on this little insert because, and I was going to cut it with this, but it wasn't going to cut very nicely. So I decided to cut with my scissors instead. I could have used my, what is that called? That tool that you use. Oh my goodness. The fuse tool, that's what it's called. I could have used that, but I wanted to sew on this on the page protector just to bring it in with the other page that had sewing on it, both of the pages that had sewing on it. So here are the close-ups of the page I just made, and as you can see, very, very minimal embellishment, but really the layers of paper are the embellishment. So I think this page looks really great, and I think that if I had added any more embellishing, it would have been too cluttered or overbearing. Oh, I love how these two pages look together. And then look at how the insert looks in between them. I think that looks really great. I like the arrow pointing at the starting mark, and then you can just kind of flip it like that. So when it's in my album, it won't look exactly like this because I don't use post-bound albums. I use 8.5 by, or not 8, I use 12 by 12 D-ring binders. And so it won't look exactly like that, but I think it'll look nice in between these two layouts. So here are some close-up photos, and this is my last page for the Doctors Are In series for the month of July. So Irit and I do this clinic every so often. We do it maybe every monthly-ish, sometimes every month, and then sometimes we skip a month or two. And so keep an eye out and we'll let you know when another clinic is coming up. In the meantime, if you haven't checked out Irit's beautiful work on this clinic, please go and check out her channel. It's linked in the information section below, and there's also a playlist that's in the information section below and also at the end of this video on a card. So click through to that playlist and check out some of the other Doctors Are In series that we've done. It always involves stash busting and kind of easily accessible ideas for how you can get scrapping right now and not have to worry about any kind of complicated techniques or using the latest items and that sort of thing. So take care and have a really great scrappy week.